Behind every bit of mom wisdom is a story of a real mom and real kids just trying to love each other well. Whether you're cozied up on the couch with a mug of coffee or out for a walk, you're welcome to join us as we share stories and laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the iMom Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the iMom Podcast. I'm Abby, Chloe, and Susan, and Megan. We're all here again together. We know that the father-son relationship is really special, but moms spend a lot of time with their sons as well, and that means that we have a strong influence on them. And in this group, we all have boys. So today we're going to talk about the relationship between moms and boys and how we can grow strong, kind young men. So everybody, talking about having boys, did you guys all want boys or girls? And how did you feel when you found out you were having boys? Susan, I know you have both, but how did you guys feel when you found out you're having boys? Did you want a boy? Did you want a girl? Chloe, Megan?
I would love either. So I found out I'm not a person that could wait till the end. I really don't know how people don't find out what they're having, but I found out with both. And so I was super excited to have both of them, both go rounds. I could tell Hampton was thrilled to have boys because he has two sisters. So he never had a brother. So he was super excited to be able to have two boys who could be brothers and grow up together. I was a little bit nervous to hear that I was going to have two boys because I'm a girl's girl. I don't know. I'm like not super athletic. I'm not super outdoorsy. So to find out I was having two boys, I was like, oh man, I'm going to be spending a lot of the time outside, a lot of the time at sporting events, or just thinking all the stereotypical boy things. But I have to say, I love it. They're so fun and so easy to be around. And it is really funny. Like if they fight or whatever, they kind of just duke it out and then move on and they're best friends again. Mm-hmm. So it's been really cute and fun to watch them grow up together. I did have two brothers, so I did know a little bit of what to expect, but it was definitely like an adjustment in my mind because for some reason, I guess I always thought I would have like three girls. Now I have two boys. So it's just funny how things work out.
What about you, Chloe? Did you imagine having girls or boys?
Well, first off, I just want to say, I don't know what you're talking about not athletic, Megan, Miss Captain of the swim team. You are an athlete. Spirit
captain.
Yes, I wanted a boy. I felt like he was a boy. I have two older brothers, so I always just kind of saw that as something I wanted. And I mean, he's young, but he's already kind of a loving danger and he's crawling and pulling up on things and trying to hurt himself every second he gets the chance to. Yeah. So, and I love it. It's fun.
You could have knocked me over with a feather when I found out I was having a boy and then finding another boy. I like you said, Megan, I always picture myself raising girls, never raising boys. Like it wasn't a possibility, which obviously it was. And was more than a possibility. It was life.
It's a reality.
Yes, exactly. Susan, you have both boys and girls. How would you describe the difference between the mother-son relationship and the mother-daughter relationship? And that's kind of a big question, but if you could narrow it down to just, a couple little things.
Oh gosh, I would say...
Choose your words wisely.
Mm-hmm. I would say, well, it's different because mine are grown. So, your girls kind of grow up to be your best friend, for sure. But my sons, I was more enamored with. I thought they were cuter.
I went in her laundry room the other day and she had like a hand-drawn picture for my brother. And I don't think she saved a single piece of anything my sister and I
Yours are all in your boxes.
Yeah, but hers is like, my brother's are the ones that are like on her desk. So.
Boys are just so cute. They're just so cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's something about parenting the opposite sex that is interesting. For me, it gives us a peek inside the male mind. As a woman, I'm like, wow, I get to raise this little man and understand what it's like to be a man, at least as the relationship between a mother and a son can be, I think
and
that's
your
interesting.
boys kind of idolize you. Like they're just so much more content with their moms than their girls are.
But I want that. But I can see how when you get older, you're like, you don't want to do that to their spouse. Like you don't want them to be a mama's boy when they're getting married and they like,
Yeah. You think I'm at risk for that?
Oh. Well, and we'll get to that. So just wait. Do you think there are things that society teaches us about parenting boys that you guys are trying to do differently?
I do. And this is my own personal opinion, but I do feel like in today's day and age that boys are kind of being emasculated a little bit and feminized. There was actually a really funny video I saw the other day on social media, and it was saying how they're having to cast all these older male actors to play these superheroes in like the Marvel movies and things like that, like Chris Pratt and some other people. And these guys are like pushing 40, which when you think of casting a male superhero, you think of like a guy in the range of like 25 to 28, but there just like aren't a lot of options for strong male actors right now.
Wow.
And so I'm not going to throw out there who they said like was one of the options, but it's a very effeminate male actor. And they were like, no one's going to want to watch that. Like he's not, a mom could beat him up. And so that's literally what they said. They're like, girls aren't going to want to watch this guy that they feel like they could beat up. So
they're saying that from this generation of actors, there aren't any like superhero looking guys.
Yes. Yeah. And like really masculine, that they feel like, so they're using all these older male actors to fill those roles. And I just feel like boys right now in today's day and age have gotten a bad rap, and they're like being told like you have to be, I don't know. I think it was due to a lot of different things that have happened in our culture and our society, but I feel like schools do I'm not hating on schools, but I think they do a bad job of allowing boys to be boys and making sure that they get outside and play a lot, and that they have that time for free play and unstructured play, because they need that. Whereas now I think a lot of boys are being diagnosed with ADD and ADHD because they're not getting that time to play in that unstructured environment, get their energy out, and they have a lot more testosterone and energy. I mean, there's been studies where girls can absolutely sit still in school, and that's why they do better in school. And then the teachers get more frustrated with the boys because they have all this energy they need to burn. And so I feel like, and like I said, I would need to research this more and come up with some cold hard stats, but I do feel like having boys, sometimes they are being told to be something they're not. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of emasculating them. Whereas I want them to go outside and get dirty and play rough. And I don't care if they play rough as long as they don't kill each other and they make up and apologize and whatnot.
Well, I think part of that comes from being afraid of doing the wrong thing. So you hear a story about a boy that asked a girl out or who flirted with a girl or did something, and she, went and complained or whatever. And it's like, you need to, and he gets corrected for it. And that message is kind of kept of like, okay, you need to be very like, is this, I don't want to use the word consensual because that leads into a whole another kind of conversation, but like, it's almost like guys are afraid to be that masculine role because they don't want to do it wrong and be offensive or overstep. So they don't know where to go because you can't do too much and you can't do too little. And so they're kind of left in this place of like, well, then what am I? What do I do?
I agree. I think when they're younger in school, you can't touch anymore. You can't hit. You can't, not that hitting is right, but I'm just saying it's so ingrained in their head from a little age that they have to try to control themselves. And then when they get older, I will say my son was in college when a lot of the things were going down about
Me Too.
Me Too. And he said to me, this just makes me afraid to date. He goes, how am I ever going to date? Because some girl can say that I did something that I didn't do, and I could get in trouble for something I didn't even do. It was kind of scary for him.
I think a lot of good things came out of that. Empowering women to speak up, but I think we have to be careful of in a society and a culture that we swing too far the other way to rectify a situation that was handled poorly to begin with. But I think too, like when we were talking about hitting and wrestling and whatnot, so I'm naturally friends with a lot of my boys' friends' moms. And when there was a bounce house at our birthday and the boys were getting rough in it, but no one was crying. They were having a blast and they were wrestling. And she's like looking at me like, are you okay with this? And I'm like, I'm okay with it if you're okay with it. She's like, someone needed to be watching. We were watching and we had our eye on it. They were just wrestling and having a good time. And I almost felt this pressure to like break it up for no reason, just because it's like outside of societal,
you don't want anyone to get hurt because of what might happen if someone gets hurt.
Right.
Well, and the funny thing is she has that bounce house at her birthday parties, and I always stand at the bounce house and I give the boys 3 minutes and then I say boys off, girls on, and the difference. And because you can't have them together. The boys are just rougher. They're all the same age. They're all the same size. The boys are rougher and the girls get hurt because to them that's scary. And they are different. You have to recognize it, and it's okay to treat your sons a little differently. I don't know if that's our point in here, but
I also too, here's a tough thing that I've struggled with mentally. So obviously, like, we tell our kids hitting is bad. You do not hit anyone, girl, boy, whoever, adult, child, you do not hit anyone, period. However, if someone hits them, I want them to stick up for themselves. I'm like, I'm not saying two rights make a wrong, but if you're an adult and someone punches, like, I want to be like, you hit them back. Like, you got to defend yourself. You can't just be like, okay, I don't know. It's kind of a weird mindset of, do we encourage that? Do we not encourage that? Like, hitting is bad, period. You don't want to, but they have to be able to defend themselves too.
Yeah. So, Susan, moms spend so much time with their kids, and I'm not saying that, moms are necessarily going to give their kids like boxing lessons or something, but like, what do you think moms can do with their kids in all this time that we spend with them to help them grow up?
I think there's balance. And I think, if you're married, definitely use your husband as an example. But you want your boys to be strong. We do not need, if we get called into a war, or if you're, you want them to put their testosterone to good use. So strong, but not domineering, kind, not condescending. Of course, that works for girls too. They need to learn to treat men and women the same, especially whether it's in school or work environment. We don't assume that one is smarter than the other. We respect both. We treat both the same. You don't disdain one and not the other. I think that's super important to nip in the bud when they're children, so that when they go into the workforce, they can be open-minded and respect that both genders have intelligence and talent, and not to look at anyone as less. That's kind of the same thing. But
do you think a mom is able to do this in a way that a dad isn't? Maybe because we're more verbal, or is a mom more equipped to teach these little lessons about balance than a dad? Maybe
I wouldn't say more or less. I think they can teach different things and point out different things. So, for example, if their husband or another male does something that's respectful, they could say, that when he did that was great because that made me feel respected. Whereas a dad can point out, hey, you don't treat your mother or any girl like that. We are men, and this is what we do. This is our code. So he can address it more from, hey, you're on my team. This is who we are, and this is how we behave.
I feel like, James is so little now, but he does certain things with me just because I'm his mommy that he doesn't do with, like, even Trent, who he adores Trent, but he grabs my face and he gives me kisses. Like, I'm enamored by him. I just love him so much. And I feel like, thinking about the future, I don't want to be that mother-in-law, who doesn't want their son to grow up, who doesn't want their son to have independence, So I guess no mom wants to create an unhealthy relationship with their son, but we hear about so many men, whether it's like a friend of ours or like even our own, like, mother-in-laws who won't let their son grow up. So what do we do to make sure we're not creating codependent relationships with our sons?
Yeah. I think that's really hard. For a little while I wouldn't say single mom as in I didn't have my ex-husband was always around. So I wasn't single parenting in that way. So I know it's a little bit different, but I think this is very difficult for single moms to not make your son the man of the house because he's not your husband, and that is very, very hard to not help him grow in responsibility, but not give him that over responsibility and treating him as a parent. So I think that all of us, to not create that codependent relationship, is to shift from coach to consultant. So we go from coaching our kids to then being the person that they are able to come to ask questions and say, hey, mom, what would you do in this situation? To gradually kind of firing ourselves from the job, and they get married and their wife becomes that person, and mentally preparing for that to happen and mentally preparing for that release versus dreading it and talking about, I don't want it to come. Well, hopefully it's going to come,
Mm-hmm. I think you have to redirect your son if he does that too. Like, if he calls you about something, you say, well, have you asked your wife? because it's that leave and cleave and he needs to start turning to her first. And if he has, then you could weigh in, but you never want him going back saying, well, I talked to my mom and blah, 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 blah. I have to say this was so funny. This is a funny story. When Mark and I first got married and had come back from our honeymoon, I moved into his house. He had a house and I got home one day from work early and there was some things on the counter, including vitamins and some other things with a note from his mother. Hey, hon, I picked up the stuff you needed. And you have to understand, my mother-in-law lives an hour and 15 minutes from her house. So not only did she go get the stuff for him, but she drove it up an hour and 15 minutes and then drove home. And he came home from work and I looked at him and he's one of 3 boys. So if she's doing this for one, I know she was doing this for all. And I said, hey, hun, you're a big boy now. Because he was 30. And I said, if you need vitamins, you should go get your vitamins because your mother just drove 2.5 hours to get you your vitamins. And you know what? If you really can't get them, I'll get them for you. But you are a big boy.
Well, and there things need to happen before they get married. You said a moment ago, like, oh, well, tell your son, did you ask your wife? But what about when he is 14, 17 years old?
Yeah.
Son, what do you think you should do in this situation? Son, what vitamins do you need? Do you know where they are in the grocery store? It's like all these little steps that we can make so they're not codependent. We like being needed, but we don't have to find our self-worth in being needed by our kids. And then once they let go, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. For some reason, I will say it is easier to do it for your sons than your daughters. I don't know why. Chloe, I'm telling you, I know why you're enamored because when Marky's born, I was like in love with him. I love my girls. I was in love.
It's weird.
It's weird.
Like, doesn't that go back to like kind of what I think it goes back to what you were saying, Megan? Like, do we treat guys, whether it's our sons or our husbands, like, do we treat them like they're incapable?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably.
And is that what our whole culture is doing?
Well, and why don't mothers of girls have that same desire to feel needed? Do we not? I mean, I don't know. I don't have girls, but do they not have that same desire to be needed?
I don't know if it's a needed thing. When Megan was born, Mark was enamored of her. I just don't know if it's not the opposite.
Well, I think as a female, all the things you want to teach your daughter, and make sure she knows how to do, because you went through them and you learned it. And so that. And same with dads with sons, like they have certain things they want to teach them and make sure they know how to do. And I think that's kind of where the difference, I just think it's opposite gender, and that's the difference.
Yeah, because like Mark had such a hard time even disciplining you, Megan. Like but he didn't have a problem with Marky.
I actually do have a hard time doing that with them.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It is.
What do you guys see as your role in teaching your sons how to treat women, or is that a dad's job?
Well, I already kind of mentioned that one example, I think pointing out how a woman feels and sharing that with her son, like, oh, I really love this. And one day, there's going to be a girl or look what your sister loves, helping them see that their sister's different and what she appreciates will help him with his wife in the future.
Yeah. Well, that's hard if your husband or maybe your ex-husband doesn't do those things.
Right.
Maybe he uses harsh words or says things that don't make you feel good. I mean, I'd love it if every woman had the husband that is the great role model for her son, but I don't think that's always the case,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reminds me of, I was watching Love is Blind, which, when did that drop? Like the new season of Love is Blind dropped like a couple months ago. And
it was Valentine's Day. I remember.
It was Valentine's Day. Yeah, there you go. And, the whole premise of the show, if you haven't watched it, is it's these couples that kind of speed date in these pods where they can't see each other and they're not allowed to talk about their physical appearance at all. So they're strictly going off of the conversations they have. And in order for them to see each other, they have to get engaged. And at the end, they go through this trial living period where they live with each other for a little bit. And then at the end, they have this decision to make. And that's the big climax of the series, is whether they are both going to agree to get married at the altar, because they don't know what each person is deciding. And one of the guys kind of jolts his bride at the altar, and everyone was so shocked by it because they thought he was so in it. And he just could not get over his kind of childhood scarring of the fact that his dad used to consistently cheat on his mom and he knew about it. And there was even occasions where he said he brought him, which was kind of shocking, but he was too afraid to get married because he didn't feel like he had the foundation to be able to get married and treat someone the way they should be treated, because his whole example was his dad cheating on his mom the whole time. And so he just couldn't bring himself to make that commitment, which to me was, and he'd been going through therapy and whatnot, but I just felt so bad for him because it had obviously happened years in the past and he was now this grown adult man, but he still could not just get past that hurdle in order to make that commitment to this woman who it seemed like he actually really did love. But that's probably me reading way more into a reality TV show.
So then to the question of a mom's role in teaching her son how to treat women, I think it's being honest about, like, when they get a little bit older, at least, to be honest about like what makes a good husband and how to be that loyal, faithful spouse. Because I remember, how did that conversation go between the mom and the dad? Remember, they ended up talking.
Oh yeah, in the end they did.
Moved by that, like something that she
was
said to
very
him.
forgiving and very. She was so graceful and tactful about it. She was very forgiving, and she basically kind of said, like, I forgive you. The past is the past, and now we have to show him how to move forward.
Yes, but she was very clear. You need to show him. You
She didn't let him off the hook.
She did not let him.
She didn't let him off the hook, but she did it in a very forgiving way of, okay, now it's your turn to show him that he can do this.
Yeah. I remember watching that scene and being like, wow, like this was honest and like really like good
She was
television.
great. Props to his mom. She was like,
she was a gem for sure.
So what do you guys think about, in today's day and age, I feel like people feel like chivalry is dead or it should be dead because, if men and women are equal, we're trying to make everything an equal playing field.
Why do you have to hold the door for me?
Yeah. Why would you, why should we teach that?
It's called kindness. And I think even girls should hold the door for somebody older for them, but men should hold the door for women. And if the woman gets mad about that, that's her problem, because I like it when people hold the door for me, especially if I've got a bunch of stuff in my hand. So, if I pull into the driveway and I have a bunch of groceries in the car, people should run out to help me. This is food for our family. And so part of this is just good manners. But I think men, are the stronger sex and they should offer to help when they can.
But to the point earlier, when you were talking about, should I ask the person out or whatever? I feel like we have made it so that if a guy went to pull out your chair on a date or whatever it might be, a girl would look at him like, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm. Let her look. That girl does not thinking straight because you should always want to be treated with respect. And that's just treating somebody with respect.
I think that's where the conversation comes in, So say he likes this girl enough to ask her out and he pulls out her chair and she's like, you don't need to do that for me. Then he can say, well, okay, I'm doing it for you because I respect you and I feel like this is something kind to do. And she says, thank you. I appreciate that. But what I feel is kindness looks like this, and this. This is what I need in a relationship. I don't necessarily need you to pull the chair out for me, but I do need you to X, Y, and Z. I think that what feels respectful to one person might not matter as much to the other. And that's when you get to know them and that's part of a relationship,
It's going to be a problem though when they're teaching their kids. He's going to want to teach his kids to pull the chair out for women. She's going to say no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they might have to then face that, or it looks like whatever it looks like for their family. My husband will walk on the outside of the sidewalk when we're walking down the street together. And I always think it's really sweet. He moves around and I'm like, if a car is going to hit you, it's probably going to hit me too. But, thank you. And you're not really going to protect me.
It's for the mud.
Right.
Keeps the mud from the wagon wheel. Splashes you in the face.
I wish my husband did that. Dad walks like 10 feet in front of me. Like, he's like, good luck.
Yeah.
See you later.
No, Mark does it.
I think more than anything, it's the symbol of thoughtfulness, because once you do have kids and you're in the day-to-day, in the trenches, like doing chores, whatever it might be, you want someone that notices you and thinks of, okay, how can I help this person? How can I be thoughtful? And I think for little boys, it's just teaching them like, this is a way to be thoughtful and show someone respect.
And we need to teach our girls too. Chivalry, it just edges out boys a little bit more in deference to women. Whereas good manners is thinking of others.
It teaches them the consideration of others. I have a funny story. So this guy that I dated in college, his mom had a hard time letting go of her little boy. And we were going into a restaurant, and I stopped in front of the door because I expected him to open the door for me. And
he hit the handicap button and let it open itself.
His mom looks at me and goes, "You know how to open a door."
Oh.
She said that to you?
Wait, why was the mom on your date?
Yeah.
Really?
That should have been flag number one.
We were with his parents.
Okay.
Oh.
She said
So
to
I was
you
just
know
like-
how to open a door?
Yeah.
That would have been game over.
I would have said, you guys go ahead. I'll catch up
Right.
later.
I
and
would have
leave.
opened the door for her. Yes, I do. Go right ahead.
Mm-hmm. I'll get my meal to
Yeah, it
go.
was so
Thanks.
funny.
Wow. So
Wait, so how did you solve that? Did you open it yourself?
I don't remember. I really don't. I just was kind of mortified. I was like, when two people are
Yeah,
going for
yeah,
a door
yeah,
and one of y'all is going to open the door, like I assumed it would have been my boyfriend. Like, I don't know. Sorry.
wrong
hurt your son.
assumption. Sorry. So what are some things moms can do, even like with some things moms do, even without being aware of how we're impacting our sons? What do you think every mom, or most moms are doing day in and day out that's having a big influence on their boys?
Oh, I think there's so many things you can do. I can't say that I am a fraction of the athlete my son was, but I did a lot with them in their sports. Like I would just stand under the hoop. One of my sons was a 3-point shooter, and I would literally stand underneath the hoop and rebound for him constantly so he could just move around that arc and shoot practice 3 points. And great conversations happened, during that time, because I was specifically would try to distract him like he was in a game and he had to shoot fast.
Yeah.
I think a mom can be involved even in a boy's life in ways that a dad sometimes is.
Just last night, my younger son and I were throwing a football, and he was in the pool and I was out of the pool, and it was a smaller football, which made a big difference because my hand doesn't fit around the full size football, even though I have long fingers, but I never can do it right. And so we used the junior size, and he was teaching me, he's like, okay, put your ring finger on this lace and then that finger on that lace. And so letting him teach me, it helped him speak more gently and, do those instructions. It was really interesting. And we actually had a good time and played for a lot longer than I normally would have. And it was something he really wanted to do with me. He really enjoyed, and I was able to finally take the time to do it. And I just think doing those little sports in whatever way works for you as a mom, it just makes a big difference.
And they can have fun. Like he was
Right.
teaching you. I ski with my boys, and they board, I ski. And there was a day when I was better and I was hanging back for them. And now they have to hang back for me, but they'll always stop and they'll go, "Oh no, that's a black mom. You don't need to go down that. We'll go down this one." Like they choose to go down the blue to spend time with me because it's a fun thing we do together.
Yeah. Well, and I would say too, I think the biggest thing that moms model for their kids is what to look for in a spouse and what to look for in someone to date, and, what a wife can look like to them in the future. Because I feel like, if, and I'm so guilty of this, and this is why it's an example, but if I'm yelling at my spouse, it's kind of they see that and they're like, that doesn't really entice them to want to get married or date or have a spouse because it looks like not a fun thing being getting yelled at. And so I am trying to do a better job of modeling that respect and showing that love and admiration for my spouse so that they can see what a good wife and a good relationship would look like down the road.
I think that there's something special about a relationship between a mom and her son. And we've kind of touched on it here and there, but I think it's easy for a mom to be warm and cuddly with her son, just because I don't know. I think that they just really, boys love their moms so much. And that's not taking anything away from moms of girls, of course. There's a study out of Harvard that found that warm mothers raised more successful sons. And I heard a guy on the radio say that he calls his mom every day. And my older son said to me, "I'll call you every day, Mom." And I said, I hope you always want to talk to me because you know that you'll feel better about yourself or about whatever the situation is when we hang up. I want you to always talk to me because of that. And so it's hard for us to balance that warmth that we want to bring them with the discipline, especially when boys grow up and become teens and tweens and all that. But at the end of the day, I really want my boys to be able to say, my mom is my biggest fan. She always makes me feel good. She's not easy. She's not a pushover, but I never doubt her love for me. And, I think that if we can be warm, that is the gift that God has given us, is this warmth and this comfort. If we can do that with our boys, I think that influences all the things and just makes our relationship so special.
Yeah. And one thing I would say that too is like with boys, they're kind of taught to keep everything in and bottle up emotions and be strong and things like that. But at the same time, there has to be some safe space that, if they need to cry or talk about something or whatever. And I feel like a lot of the times that is moms. And so if they don't have that there, I don't know, where else that would be. And so that's what I think is so great about moms, is they feel like my boys will cry to me about something that they will never go to my husband for. Like they'll come to me.
I think what you said too about being their cheerleader, I think being a guy is discouraging, competitive, weird right now. And one of my sons wrote me, I had written him a long letter, write those letters. Oh my gosh. And he's an introvert. Both my boys are introverts. I didn't think it meant that much to him. But years later, he took my letter and verbatim wrote me back what it had meant to him. And it sits in a drawer next to my bed because to me, he did listen. He kept the letter. Mm-hmm. He remembered it. And then he shared all the ways that it had impacted him. So
next to the drawings.
I have a few of
Megan
your
is not bitter. She's
have
not bitter
a few
at all.
of your letters too, Meg.
You know what? That reminds me. I'll put this in the show notes, but we have a great article on what to put in a letter to your son. So I'll put that and a few other resources in the show notes for you. And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the iMom podcast. iMom is the motherhood program of the nonprofit organization Family First. Along with our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the iMom Minute, by going to imom.com/subscribe and get tons of great ideas, insight, and inspiration. The iMom podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal.